Welcome to Idiot Talk, or when the pod hits the pod app, it plays like a king. What it says every ep when it goes on the cloud, and you'll hear the whole thing before you let your phone ring. There's no podcast that's better when you're tuned in tonight, so when you have headphones, you choose your own cast. And remember that Glens are the greatest of hosts, and if you listen too fast, then you'll miss all the jokes, but if you wait, it won't matter, because it's in your downloads. This is an Apple podcast. By that, I mean a podcast about the music, work, life of Fiona Apple. I am Walker Glenn.
I'm Zach Glenn.
And you may be jumping in because this is our first episode about her fourth studio album, The Idler Wheel. Actually, I'm going to just say the full title now. Another poem, not as intimidating of a word count this time, but still a long album title.
Words, not 93.
Yeah, this one is written all in Sanskrit. So, is it Sanskrit or Sanskrit?
Script.
So it's neither. It's not getting a script, and it's not a script. It's a whole other thing.
Sanskrit can be a thing too, though. But what you're referring to is Sanskrit.
Sanskrit is where you write a screenplay, but you never set a good foundation for your characters, and then it all falls apart in the third act. That's a Sanskrit.
I've never seen a movie like that, especially not nowadays. Please go ahead with the album title. Or in the movies.
Fiona's fourth studio album that we're beginning to cover today with this episode is The Idler Wheel is Wiser Than the Driver of the Screw, and Whipping Cords Will Serve You More Than Ropes Will Ever Do. Love it. I'll say that right now. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, TOZ holding back. Oh, I guess
no. You're in family mode still.
I know. Sorry. TOZ is what well, I guess listeners who listen to our Clifford episode know that is your avuncular name. In any case, that is the full title of the album we're discussing today. Henceforth will probably mostly be referred to as The Idler Wheel, another one that is often truncated. But just to let you know, if you're jumping on board because this is your favorite Fiona album and you thought, I'll try these boys out on this one, we are covering her whole discography this season, as well as doing a few episodes about non-album work that she did. We did a hiatus episode, as well as we occasionally do movie episodes. So that's this season. Last season, we did the discography of Radiohead. So if you enjoy this, if you're jumping in and you like it, lots of content for you to go through out there. But I'm really, really excited to discuss this album, which is a really big one for me with my brother today. But Zach, we've been on a bit of a Fiona-like hiatus ourselves, haven't we?
In a way. I mean, I've been filling my podcast vacation time with the subject at hand. So
there you go. Research and development.
No, I'm sorry, did you ask me how break's been going, or I forget what your question even was?
I implied it. I mean, we're in a bit different season too. When we left off, we were in the eye of the storm of spooky season, and now we are approaching the Thanksgiving season. It's a week before Thanksgiving, 6 days at the time that our listeners are hearing this.
But yeah, 17 days, isn't it? Oh, when they're hearing it. Oh, yes, Walker, of course.
Yes. You know, we record these the morning. These come out at 12 a.m. on Friday mornings, and we record them. We stop recording at 11:59 p.m. on Thursday evening, so that you know, our takes are to the second. But no, how has your break been, and how are you doing in general?
Break's been amazing. I'm doing great. Got some rain this weekend. It was storming this morning when I woke up at 7 a.m. and now it's sunny. So kind of like the roller coaster of my emotions, man. It's
I was going to say that's like a perfect. It's same deal here. It's the sun is kind of breaking through the clouds over here in the Bay Area. Rained throughout the night and this morning, but I feel like that spectrum of what's happening in the sky, very representative of what Fiona gives us on the records we've covered so far, and we'll see about on these records. What if on this record it's just like she became an incredibly boring person with nothing interesting to say? That would be surprising, but we don't know yet.
She's like, you know whose career I really like? Weezer.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, I'm gonna just like ride the gimmick of doing kind of like black slang as a nerdy white person over guitar music for the next 30 years. What if this album came out and it's just like, it's 2012? I feel like this would be a contemporary reference of that time. What if it came out and it's just like Fergie style, just completely insipid, like just
Dude, no, I mean,
songs about tits.
You're making it funny, but it's like I do wonder about I don't have a lot of positive examples of this, or a lot of examples, which I guess is a positive. But Weezer being an outlier because it's this is not a Weezer podcast, but the median position to me seems to be that for men and women around our age, the first two albums are still a fun listen. They are nostalgic. They're maybe not as good as other stuff of that time, but everything after it declines, and how much it declines, is per Weezer fan, right? But
I think, I think that the first two have stood the test of time, as as much. All art is subjective, of course, but I think that as much as you can be objective about such things, I think they're really, really, really great records.
Right. Absolutely. It's just like Pinkerton, for instance, for me is like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's amazing for what it is in the tone that it's in, but it's not Jurassic Park made by the same director or something like that. It's not OK Computer. I have to set myself in a mindset of kind of just like, this is going to be fun, and I don't need to break apart the music or whatever. Pinkerton maybe being the wrong example because that one's maybe their most serious. So like Blue Album, this is not convoluted at all. But I think going back to Fiona, though, it's like there are artists that, I think just have to make a really poor attempt to evolve with the time. And anecdotally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of this band, but I respect them. But my wife, Kailani, is a big Modest Mouse fan. She's like, had their whole discography for their first like 4 or 5 albums, because they didn't even have that big break. And I think that was like their 5th album or so, right? More of an underground band until they broke big.
Sure. Yeah. The good news for people who love bad news.
Love bad news. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm not disagreeing. You could be right, but I wouldn't be surprised if they even had more records than that before it came out. They were. Oh
yeah. I think that was their 4th or 5th album is what I'm saying.
Okay. That makes sense.
Because that was 2004. I think their first album's in 97. So anyways, the other day.
That makes sense.
Kai and I will have these little music check-ins like throughout the week or whatever. And she goes, oh man, I'm going to check out the new Modest Mouse album. And I go, all right, well, you let me know how that goes, And I walk in like an hour later, she's working on her computer. And she goes, the new Modest Mouse album, woof. They're trying to sound like Imagine Dragons. Now, that didn't sting me so bad because I respect them. It's just like, it's just not I don't love their music, essentially. But I know it's unique and has like that soul piece and stuff. But there's just so many bands that just like, it's not that they lose that integrity or to make great art, but I think there's just some level of contemporary influence that, like when dubstep started being in rock music in 2011 for like the bridge, and you're just like, ugh. And it happens, and sometimes it can make it work. What this album does not suffer from at all is, I feel, what maybe Extraordinary Machine we were feeling just a little bit, right? It is so authentic and so her. It does not feel like it's a hodgepodge of what was getting. I'm talking about the Idler Wheel. To clarify, to me, it just feels so authentically her, and it's so great to listen to something that was made 11 years ago now, and it does feel in its era, but it doesn't feel like it was stylistic choices she didn't want to make. Please take it away.
Oh, I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, I guess I don't even know that I don't even know that I feel like this album sounds like it's in its era, except that I don't know if I can say that about this record because I still don't know other albums that sound like this.
Mm.
But
Okay.
I mean, I really like the kind of more broad point you're making about where attempting to adapt or innovate with the times where it becomes problematic for bands. It's interesting, and I don't have like a unifying theory about whether you should or shouldn't do it.
You should just be Radiohead is the theory, right? Or Fiona Apple.
You should be Radiohead. But like, I think that the thing that I feel like praised about Radiohead and the Smile, I would say, about the later work of this stuff is it feels like the things that are innovated now within the music are coming from, they seem to me to come from a very organic place of like, oh, Johnny Greenwood is doing all this like finger tapping, percussive playing on the guitar, not because I don't get a sense that it's because he thinks this is like going to be trendy or anything like that. It's just, this is what's happened after, being the kind of musician that he is. He's found a new way to play that's exciting to him. And that organic approach is really nice. But I also don't think Radiohead has tried to reinvent their sound for the last few albums. I don't get the impression that it's trying to I don't get the impression that they've been trying to keep up with what they perceive as happening around them in music really since Kid A, Amnesiac.
Can I just respond to that?
Sure.
Real quick? Except for in the golden era of Radiohead, which is OK Computer On, in my estimation. Except for 2 albums, Hail to the Thief and The King of Limbs. And while I would never say that those albums, but you made the point so well, and we agreed to summarize that it feels like maybe their influences are outpacing them a little bit on Hail to the Thief. And then on King of Limbs, it's 2011, there is that sort of dubstep infusion on like 2 tracks, but in a way that is like, they're not really innovating with like older technology. They're kind of using what's current, and it doesn't sound exciting. And so I think even within that highest tier, there are examples of it occurring, and they might be a little bit lower in that favorite.
I think that's a good point. And I mean, the other thing too is like, if you see, again, I don't have it's a theory, or it's an opinion full of contradictions that I guess it's one of those things where it's like, it works when it works, it doesn't when it doesn't. Because I also don't think it's good for artists to slam their ears shut and not take in new things, and that's something like, I love about like, say, like Paul McCartney or whatever. Not that I really listen to a lot of Paul McCartney's new music, but that I love when he talks about music, that he's still excited by stuff that is happening now. Taking it out of music, I think that's like a reason like Martin Scorsese can still make great movies is, it's really it's really exciting to hear this 82-year-old guy be like, oh, this was really influenced by Ari Aster's last couple movies or whatever. That's
I
cool.
saw the Ari Aster picture. It was fantastic.
Oh, Beau is Afraid. Fantastic picture. Fantastic picture.
And I never thought that I was going to use that for Bobby, but there was something about the way Bobby looked at the camera that reminded me of Joaquin Phoenix's performance.
And then I thought, Beau is afraid. Well, what about Bobby being afraid? Because we've seen him be the tough guy, but we haven't seen him be afraid before.
So good. Continue.
Anyway, all that to say, it's not an absolute thing or any sort of black and white belief, but I tend to think that more often or not, when people get of a certain age, I appreciate a little more. I think that there's a safety in preserving your quality a little more if you are, instead of constantly trying to adapt, if you are good at identifying what you do and just continuing to perfect that. And I think Radiohead is a good example of that. I don't know, a band like Built to Spill comes to mind or whatever. It's just like, what we do is we make good,
Wilco.
write good. Wilco is a great example. And I do think the high watermark of a band like Wilco and a band like Radiohead are the albums where they're kind of inventing something, inventing a sound. But I tend to think it's better to not do that forever. Wilco is a great example. We write really good sounding alt country kind of roots rock songs. Like, and we're really good at it. And like, you know, we do these kind of arrangements is cool for me. Built to Spill. We do wall of sound guitar music, like kind of emotional, like, classic rock meets indie rock style. And we've been doing that for 10 albums now, you know, cause I hear something like, I every once in a while, like Weezer, I will go, God, what the hell does the new Weezer sound like? And then, you know, rarely do I make it through more than half of the first couple songs. I did that with Green Day sometime recently.
Well, they have a new album coming out this year.
Yes.
Oh,
and I did it with
before that announcement. It sounds like
it was the album. It's got the word motherfucker in the title, and the cover has like imagery from the American Idiot cover, but there's also like a unicorn throwing up, and it looks like a kid's like
it's like their 2021 album, I believe,
binder covered with stickers. And I listened to it, and it is, you know, older men who have done pop punk for their entire careers, trying to do what I think is an attempt at like modern radio pop. Not like even really pop rock, but like pop. And I don't understand who that's for, because I don't think that you are likely to reach the younger generation of trying to assimilate. Is that the word I want to use? Trying to what's it? I'm trying to say like make like when you make a facsimile of something.
Oh, I don't know, but that might be a combo word.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a word, but trying to mimic what you perceive, what your kids are listening to. I don't think that you are likely going to be able to achieve that enough to reach a new generation, and I don't think that you doing that will speak to your old fans. And when I hear that, I literally go,
"Yes, dude."
I don't understand why you would not just put out a new album of 15 catchy pop punk Green Day songs and go tour that with go put 5 of those songs in the set of your 30-year career of hits to an audience of, 40-year-olds who still rock with you. Yeah, and also younger people still discover older music. And I think they respond more to an authenticity of people doing what they actually do and speaking their own kind of musical language than they do of people trying to achieve relevance by trying to be modern when it's not really in their vocabulary.
U2.
U2 is a great example. Every U2 album, they get whoever the hottest producer of the day is, and it's like, oh, okay, now we sound like the Arcade Fire. Now we sound like Imagine Dragons. Like, and it's like, okay.
But Edge, can you
sound like old guys
riff?
doing that?
Yeah, can you do that one riff that much lesser bands have mimicked for decades? Walker, your point is so well made, and this is not a critique I'm lobbing at you, and I want to refocus on Fiona, but on the Green Day thing. It's not, but this is like, it's going to sound that way. Isn't it so easy though to say something like the Green Day example, guys, hey, we're all Bay Area natives, but what you were saying though, about like not trying to appeal to some new generation and bring in the 35 to 55-year-old demo, which is their probably age of their primary audience, right? That grew up with them.
Yeah.
They're probably sick of writing the Green Day songs that we would quote unquote want to hear. And who even knows if we would want to hear and that's why American Idiot reinvented them and all that. So I'm not even disagreeing with you, but I think in the case of something like that is an entity now, but maybe they don't have like it's probably a lot of studio influence and choices of like, hey, here's this new tool, let's add this noise in or something like that. And I don't know, but I just think what Fiona Apple and Radiohead have in common is the spacing out of music. Now, Green Day have spaced out their albums a lot more, actually, since American Idiot, which I think was a very wise choice. But I think that it's very, very important to like retain that fan base and keep them curious by the amount of times per album. Radiohead famously, those dates got longer and longer until they reached what might be their ninth and final album. And then Fiona Apple, how many years? I know this album was completed a year before it was released, but how many years?
This was a 7-year gap.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not an automatic to make.
And it'll be longer before the next one.
It sure will.
Yeah.
And now, like you were just saying, like, you know, this is full of contradictions, and it's a great point to use when it works and not when it doesn't. But I do think there's something to that, right? Of like letting it bake. There's a lot of privilege in being able to do that. I'm not saying Fiona Apple sat on her ass or anything like that, but she is probably able to sustain a certain style of standard of living. I'm sorry, and good for her. So if you're afforded that luxury as an artist, there's no silver bullet. There's no amount of time. But I do think letting it breathe and not, people are so sensitive to an attempt to try and stay relevant, cranking stuff out. The big contradiction to all of that would be somebody like Prince, right? So like that dude couldn't stop making albums, right? And right. I'm newer to Prince, much newer than you are. I've gotten really into a lot of his albums lately and stuff, and I love that. Woody Allen, you know, not seemingly a great guy, very controversial figure. One thing I admire is a movie a year when he was up until, you know. So I love those.
Don't you think though that
is?
But with Woody Allen though, it is such an example of like how many of the movies suck. Like the great ones are great, but a lot of the movies suck.
Yes, but
and I bet like Scorsese's made a lot of movies, but I bet his batting average would be a lot lower if he made a movie a year instead of letting the inspiration breathe and grow, like you're kind of saying.
And Dewey Cox taught us, you know, that you can you can sit on a masterpiece for too long, just like James Cameron, right? So it goes both ways, right? Avatar is fine, and the sequel is fine. It's nowhere near as good, in my opinion, as all of his other movies that came before it, you know, and that's my opinion.
I love Avatar.
But what's that?
I love Avatar.
Right, but do you watch that or T2 more often?
Oh, I like Avatar way better than T2.
Okay.
But I like Terminator
Aliens.
a lot. Aliens I like better than all of those movies. And Terminator I like better than all of those movies except Aliens.
Totally. Okay. So I just think it feels so organic. Now, I've taken us all over the damn map in terms of our normal order. I gave my general thoughts and all that positivity. So please feel free to refocus us. But I do just want to say, I said I hear a little bit of contemporary influence in it, and I want to call back to that later. But I want.
Well, I'd like to hear that, and I don't even. It's not that I disagree with that. It's just that I don't hear. Whereas, I would say every album of hers we've covered so far, I do hear the era. Now, the only one where I feel like, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like the only one where that kind of came up as a slightly problematic element of the album was Extraordinary Machine. Because I felt like the first two records sound like everything that I love about the late 90s while also sounding like something totally distinct and unique to Fiona Apple's music. This album is so stripped down and so raw. And I don't know. I'm kind of trying to go like, well, was that like we're really established. I guess when I think about that being reminiscent of the time that this came out, I know there's a lot of lo-fi music and you know and stripped down indie acts and singer-songwriter acts specifically and stuff like that, but I don't know that I can think off the top of my head of other big established artists at this time doing this. This approach to music where it's like, like your records have gotten
approach or something.
It's totally.
It's
I mean,
been done
like
before, but not in that era. It's kind of.
It's been done before, and it's been done since. Like, I mean, Wilco have come up. Their most recent album is called "Ode to Joy." It's extremely stripped down. It's gorgeous, and so that also contradicts the grander point. I don't think they reinvented themselves, but there's still excitement to be had in taking new approaches to music. I don't want to hear you play the same song 10 times an album for your entire career, but.
Totally.
I don't know. I feel like we're like naturally getting into talking about the album. Let's stay on the thing you're talking about. What is it about this album that feels 2012 to you, or what other work from the kind of the tens would you say this shares DNA with? If that's even the point you were making, feel free.
No, it is. I think that what you said was maybe like a little bit more broad and focused at the same time, and I totally agree. Like, it is a bold approach, and I don't know of a lot of other contemporary artists, even though she did maintain that very like underground, but like she's running in all the circles, and like your music nerds are going to know about Fiona Apple is sort of my perception, right?
And I guess I mean, it's not even how big or not, it's like established and a known entity in show business who I would say each album has been. Well, that's not really true. It hasn't linearly gotten bigger, but they have all been. They've all been very produced in one way or another, and this, especially the last one, and this one, you could call it a lot of things, but it's not a super produced record. Anyway, I apologize for interrupting.
No, not at all. I appreciate it. So I think that, and I'm going to get to it. I think what I love, Fiona's albums are all so authentic, and I don't mean to sound like so podcast up my own ass or whatever, the artistry, but it's true. I mean, it's true. This one to me is like the peak of that authenticity. I'm not saying it's my favorite. I'm not saying it won't be surpassed, but where we're at right now, especially on the heels of the last one, I feel like you hear her age in the most beautiful way. Like you hear more. She started at such a young age with such a high maturity. I just feel like I'm in the room with this philosopher who's now, I don't know how old she actually was. She's probably 30
Zach
at the time.
No, Zach.
35?
She was Zach.
34. What?
She was 34. Like a certain Idio Talk co-host. So no wonder this is resonating with you so much. Me, I can barely remember being 34.
I love this I feel like her voice, I don't think Fiona Apple, who knows? I'm sure she smoked a cigarette in her life. I don't think she's particularly hard on her body in the vocal department, but I hear like a little bit of a hoarseness in her voice that I love so much. We've talked about what an amazing singer she is. On the singing, where I hear contemporary influence, and I don't know what directions it goes in, is Florence and the Machine. The very anthemic in that opening track. All the dog days are over.
Okay.
And
totally.
By the way, hearing one melodic similarity is not a hot take. It's not a detriment to this album at all. I've actually
this came out before that though, didn't it?
Same year. And Florence and the Machine, that was not her debut, and she was very popular in Ireland, I believe. This is not solving a riddle. This is not even digging the album. It's just like when I popped it on over the last month, because this is the album tied with Win the Pawn that I've listened to the most out of pre-pod, just because I fucking love it so much. Something will just hit your ears, and that was it. And it wasn't like, oh my God, because there's a melodic or stylistic similarity, it's less original or whatever. But that was it. And I always like to do like little tests with Kai, and I just played her that song. I know she's heard the album, and I was like, who does this remind you of? She goes, Florence and the Machine. That's one person corroborating my... but I love that. I don't mind it at all.
That's interesting.
It's not a production choice that is derivative or something like that. And I'm sure somebody like the artist Florence and the Machine, I think her name is actually Florence, but would admire and derive influence from someone like Fiona. But yeah, that's all. And I have other comparisons.
Now that you mention it, I also think that, and now this might be my bias, is I tend to hear this record the same way we kind of do those really, really pivotal Radiohead records, like
Pablo Honey. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like Pablo Honey, but just not even Pablo Honey, but Pop Is Dead, the single they released for Pablo Honey, that people consider their worst song, and I don't necessarily disagree. No, but specifically OK Computer and Kid A.
Totally.
Whether or not they're your favorite, they're the two biggest reinventions and have a just immeasurable influence over contemporary music.
Pioneers in their field.
So I don't know if it's just that I love Fiona Apple more than I love other stuff from this time, and I'm assuming she got there first, but I tend to hear this record in a way of like, if it does sound like stuff from the time, that it's her influencing how things sound.
Of course.
And the other thing, now that you mention it, that I actually do think of as pretty trendy during the 10s is in kind of singer-songwritery music specifically, the percussion choices of this album. I think there's a lot of, because the other reason I would say that song sounds like Florence and the Machine is, what is the driving percussion track on that Florence and the Machine song? It's a floor tom going do 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 do, and that kind of sound shows up in a lot of stuff I like and a lot of stuff I don't like. Like I would use, fucking what's that bullshit band with the banjo? Mumford and Sons. Like, that cut, instead of going full drums, but having a really heavy either a bass drum or a floor tom drive the backbeat of your song. I do think that is a popular choice in kind of the over the next decade in music.
Yeah, and Walker, I'm looking at Florence and the Machine, kind of just their history and formation, and Florence Welch. I apologize. They hail from London, not Ireland. Famously, not two places you want to mix up.
Yeah.
Going back to 2007, and really did not have for my understanding, did not have a lot of attention here in North America until that breakthrough album that I was talking about. Again, it's not. I think you actually did a much better job of calling to a broad attention of hey, the percussion choices. I was thinking of that Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zero song.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I hear a little bit of that. And it's like, to quote myself, a journalist, I really respect Zach Glenn in our Hail to the Thief episode. I think in Hail to the Thief, it's like Radiohead are such an influential band and such pioneers. And obviously I'm biased, but there are millions of people that hold that, or thousands of journalists that have stated the same thing or whatever. I think that they could have shaped the sound of 2003 with Hail to the Thief, even the stuff I don't like, right? But that's probably not the case. But the 2011-2012 bubble of that call and response with bands that had 87 people in them for no reason, that was a pretty specific moment in time, in the same way 2005 and 2006 was. And there's so much stuff I love from 2005 and 6, and there's so much stuff that I will never think about again, and I think society at large doesn't want to. And that's going to happen in cycles in music probably every year, but I think 2011 and 2012 is very much an era of music that the stuff that stands the test of time, I can't help but hear the other inputs stylistically. But this is one that I find myself going back to the most in terms of albums since 2010. I love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't said I fucking adore this album also. And this has been probably the Fiona Apple album I've listened to the most in my life, right. I would say. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I started out disagreeing with you, but I am seeing your point more of kind of the contemporary sound of this record a little more. I think that it also does just sound eraless to me because of, as I think you also said, just how authentic it is to the artist. How it feels just so tied to it. Of course, it's like, as we're talking about, I'm realizing it's like, of course, Fiona Apple, she doesn't live in a hermetically sealed chamber where she doesn't like take in influences, but it's also like she sounds so just individualized and specific to me that it feels to me like it's like she sounds to me like she doesn't listen to anything but Fiona Apple, even though I know that's not true. And definitely kind of the boom clap, like hand claps and floor toms thing does really, really either was or becomes very trendy and kind of like indie pop rock of the time. I think to invoke an artist that you already have mentioned, to invoke a Prince, I think the other reason this album sounds pretty removed from any specific era of me is, like Prince, Fiona Apple is one of those artists for me that can take a contemporary influence or do a genre exercise or do like I'm going to do a Velvet Underground style song or whatever, and then is just so odd and specific in her sensibility that it just ends up not so it's like she is doing a lot of like hand clappy and handheld and kind of standing drum kit type of percussion on this album, but it doesn't end up sounding to me like the use of those sounds that permeate music from this time.
You know what, Walker? I think that's so well said. And I was thinking about this album in comparison to what I had noted as my previous favorite, When the Pawn. And this show isn't about comparing, previous albums within the artist. It's about comparing all artists to Radiohead, I think. No, I'm just kidding. I was thinking about...
That does seem to be our overall project.
No, I was thinking about, like, is this better? Do I like it more? Whatever. And I don't know the answer to that. But I think what I love so much about Win the Pawn, to put it simply, is it fucking rocks. And it rocks in Fiona Apple context. It's not, a Guns N' Roses album or Led Zeppelin or whatever, but it really, really hits. And
it's a heavy sound.
Yeah, the guitar work in harmony with her voice. Listeners, go back and listen to our episode, and then go listen to the album on Win the Pawn.
Yeah, you don't want to go in blind. You don't just listen to the album without us telling you how to listen to it.
To me, just to keep it simple, this album doesn't quote unquote rock as much. But what I love about it so much is that it does sort of feel like one song. And in that way, Walker, albums that remind, not one song. Of course, there's key changes and variation and huge differences per song. But it just feels like one flowing river of experience, the same way In Rainbows does, the same way Dark Side of the Moon does. You know what I'm saying? Then that's what I love about it so much. It's not background music to me. I recognize that there's a ton of variation within the album, but it flows. I mean, it just flows like one continuous journey. And When the Pawn, to me, doesn't do that. There's big and then there's like different. And I love that about it. It's not abrasive. And Extraordinary Machine does the same thing as When the Pawn, and I think it does it poorly, if I were to be very harsh. I think it's a great album with great songs, but the bump and grind, so to speak, of different songs against each other is bad. In Fiona context, this one, it just feels like one cohesive experience, and that, to me, that is the best praise I know how to give something that feels like, when an album feels like a journey instead of just going to my favorite. So please take it away.
I want to ask you, I mean, we've both said that we love this album. I've said that it's, the Fiona Apple album I've probably listened to the most in my life. What is your experience with this album? Was this discovered for you? Did you listen to it? Were you anticipating it? Did this involve delivering pizzas around Chico, like a lot of your other Fiona experiences? Like, what's your history with this album been?
So, yes, Walker, this does coincide to my pizza delivery days, because this album had a release date of June 18th, 2012. So I've been working at Domino's, 6 months or whatever, driving around till 2, 3 in the morning, as I've covered. And I was anticipating this album because my Fiona Apple fanship, discovery, whatever you want to call it, was at full throttle. And I was just really, really, really zeroing in on her as an artist and her catalog. and just, I mean, it sounds cheesy, but just like having my mind blown when you discover a new type of music by a new artist. It is that feeling, especially in your 20s or whatever, the later in life you get, it is that thing of like, I can't believe I didn't know that this existed, that people could do this or whatever. So, yes, I felt really cool that I was anticipating a Fiona Apple album. I was starting to kind of catch like, oh, this is like a cool artist, and like this is like a grown up thing for me. This is all retrospective. I did not think this pompously or consciously about it, but I was excited, and I was excited to be excited, just like I was with the King of Limbs. Results, you know, a little bit different maybe. Love that album, but I would say this one met those expectations. And I do think because of some of the just lightly contemporary stuff that you talked about, the percussion, I talked about the vocals, I do think that made it appeal very quickly to me as well, you know, because so much of that music was proliferating, but this just felt, I'm not trying to say it felt like higher art or something like that, but it was just like, I know this is good. And I was already a musician then, and I understood composition and all that, you know, to a degree. But whether you care about that stuff or not, I do think the music hits you that way. And yeah, that was my experience. I anticipated it. I listened to it all summer that year. Got a couple people into it. Friend of the show, friend in life, Keith Bratton. His wife is a huge Fiona Apple fan. That was my junior year of college, and that was sort of what helped us become friends, was find a common thing to bond about, and it was the Eye of the Wheel. So yeah, just a really, really special experience kind of discovering it and listening to it, but not really, I know I've talked for a while, but not a ton of detail besides that.
Well, I mean, no, it's interesting because, I mean, we were both anticipating it. I don't remember us ever talking. I don't remember us really ever talking about both being such big Fiona Apple fans until really, I don't know, like we were kind of doing the podcast. I'm sure it's maybe come up conversationally once or twice, but it wasn't a defining bond the way our mutual Radiohead fanship has been over the last, you know, decade plus. Yeah, I mean, similarly, I would say what's notable about anticipating this album for me is that this was the first album in which I had gone fully digital. You know,
Sure. Me too.
So, you know, this is an album that I listened to for the first and for the subsequent years until I got it on vinyl. I don't know, 3-4 years ago, maybe. Listened to on my iPhone. I was really excited for it to come out, but you know, just easy access for the first time. I talked about how with Extraordinary Machine, it was just like, okay, I've LimeWired 6 of the songs and then I'm now piecing it together, you know, like all that shit.
But easy access was new. I just want to interject. That's why I think I listened to it so much. Like I used to listen to music. Please go ahead.
Oh, totally. I mean, this was the easiest time I ever had getting a Fiona Apple album is what I'm saying. You know, Gone was the step of having to load songs from your computer into a 20-pound iPod that you would carry around with that spinning wheel and all that stuff. And that's not a great story, but I kind of identify the time of listening to this, what the big albums were for me at this time. And so much so, you know, this, when I looked at how far apart they were actually released, it definitely makes me realize that I am conflating a couple year period into much closer together. But I do think that the big albums of the early 2010s for me were this and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West.
I wanted to guess.
And he's come up on this podcast a few times because I do think that, well, we talked about it because he talked about being directly inspired by Sleep to Dream. That he thought she was singing like she was on top of a mountain, and that's how he wanted to rap. I think that, you know, not including any sort of recent Kanye news, I think that they have faced similar media scrutiny in some ways. They have, and that comes from being blunt, outspoken, saying what's on your mind at the time. And I think that they also have a similar execution to their music in a certain way where
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like it's coming from the brain to your ears.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're both excellent producers as well.
Both excellent producers, both, you know,
They understand the whole fucking 360, I feel like.
Yes, totally. And yeah, and just like and you know, and persona wise, I think there's like some connections there. And I think they think there's some connections there because they have interviewed each other and like talked about this. So
yeah,
in any case, those are kind of the defining records of this time for me. That Kanye record came out in 2010, but I remember I was sitting at my computer the morning that was going to be released, like waiting for it to go live and download it, and just sat there and listened to it all in headphones. I wish I could remember a similar experience of the first time I listened to this album, but I know I was greatly anticipating it. I know I was listening to it as soon as it came out. And I know I was anticipating it because I remember becoming aware of it because the single Every Single Night and its accompanying video were released. And I remember watching that on like pitchfork.com or whatever. For you, it was your time in Chico. For me, this is what I have previously on this season called my untriumphant return to my hometown, where I was living again from 2010 to 2012. And moved back to the Bay Area in fall of 2012. So this would have been at the tail end there. And so it's just not, you know, music is always important to me, but I remember music and movies were particularly important to me at this time because those were kind of my friends at this time. And and I don't know. It's really easy to look back. There's probably a tendency to go back and rewrite history and like, you know, remember how much you got something at the time. I knew I've talked about that Extraordinary Machine was the first one where it's like, oh, this is for me. I'm a grown up. This is grown up music. She's talking to me. I understand what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Putting that in a shorter way, that was the first time I really got Fiona Apple. I would say this album was the first time I was like, she's a genius. Like that's what I'm hearing is I'm hearing a one of a kind artistic genius. And
I love that.
I don't mind saying I still feel that way when I listen to this album today. It's just, this is a singular vision that nobody else could do. Try all you want to make a record that sounds like this. You're not going to be able to do it because you're not Fiona Apple.
Walker, your summation of your love for this album was a singular vision that was so authentic. Because
hey, Zach, we just took a hiatus. We got to come back with a staggering work of genius. We're mirroring the arc of Fiona.
Exactly. No, but I mean, I was using a comedic vibe when I said that, but no, I mean, it is authentic because I love how you said there's an attempt to rewrite history. I remember the first time. I love to do that because when I can remember, at least in my honest mind's eye, it is so specific and special. And I don't have a lot of those memories. I have them with some of the albums of the two artists we have covered. I don't remember popping this on, you know, what day of the week it was or whatever. I know it was within the month it came out. And like The King of Limbs, Radiohead's album that was released in 2011, and they were my favorite band, you know, prior to that, 2009 onwards, essentially. I was so excited that I'm like, there's a new Radiohead album and I get to participate in this. I don't get to find out about the band from this one. I'm like, you know, even though they didn't promote that album a lot, like I'm getting to live in this maybe in Rainbows Repeat. This one, it was like because I had become so obsessed in such a compressed amount of time with Tidal and When the Pawn specifically. And then I had this one. I was like so excited. And then for it to meet that, I feel like I'm repeating my point. But what you said, though, where it was like you digested it and were like, this is a singularly brilliant artist. I don't know that I had the clarity of thought or that impression at the time, you know, but I definitely feel that way now. And so it makes me really happy to like think back on myself, you know, in my early 20s. It's not like I was that immature of a person, but that I was like trying to push myself to be so into this album, you know, and not in a forced way or anything like that. As you said, we didn't, there wasn't really a lot of external influence pushing me to. I'm sure there's subconsciously. It's like in a future episode that's going to come out, how we watch Bottle Rocket all the time. It's not like we were like family kids that were like, Walker and I are going to be the Coens and grow up and make movies together. That said, I think it's pretty fucking cool that as like 12 and 13-year-olds, we were obsessed with a Wes Anderson film. You know, I'm not trying to praise us here, but it's cool. It makes me happy.
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, like, I think that I have been very fortunate in the things that have like shaped my taste. I think because I know what you're saying. Like, it's like it has been warranted to kind of give our flowers to the both peer influences and like adult influences that have like introduced us to cool stuff along the way. And I think we have done that on this podcast. I also think, so this is not negating that, but it's like also, I don't think that we weren't completely isolated culturally, but I don't think that we grew up with culture being super easy to come by necessarily. And like, you know, I didn't grow up listening to or watching things that were hip. So it is kind of notable when our mom is like rocking Tidal all the time, or our aunt is showing us Bottle Rocket or whatever. Like it's like those, you look back on those and they feel like pretty like formative experiences based on the stuff we're into now. About this album, I feel like such the beneficiary of the fact that I was able to get it at the time. I feel like is being a beneficiary of getting to grow up with her music along with her. She's a few years older than me or whatever, but the space that you were talking about earlier, the time taken between each record, the fact that this came out in my late 20s, I guarantee you I would have not been able to get into this as much if it had come out in my late teens, because in the intervening 10 years, it's like I've gotten In Rainbows, and through In Rainbows, I've gotten to finally understand Kid A. And I've had my friends who are like, why have you never listened to the Velvet Underground? If you love the Beatles, why have you not, you know, everything that has formed my taste in the meantime was like what I was the beneficiary of by the time this came out. And so I do feel like it was like the perfect time where my taste was pretty formed to what it is today. Like my taste from the time I was 17 to 27 changed a ton, and my taste from the time 27 to 37 pretty much the same. I get hipped to new stuff every once in a while. I try to keep an open mind. I like to keep up with music, and there's a ton out there that I haven't heard, and there's a ton out there that I'll never hear. But it was really, really nice to get this record at a time when I was ready for it.
Yeah, man. And Fiona continues to open up those paths to Fiona and not only Radiohead, but artists like that continue to open up those avenues. Tom Waits would be an example. Tom Waits is obviously incredibly successful and well-known in that sphere. People that listen to a lot of music and are into, you know, or watch The Wire, you know, or whatever, or have seen Mystery Men. I'm not pretending Tom Waits isn't, but he's not Prince, for instance, or something like that, right? He's not an international symbol on his own. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that
he's not going to do an arena tour.
Exactly. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I pop on Fela Kuti and Tom Waits or something, for instance, every day. And when I do, I have a similar feeling of, man, I listened to Tom Waits today. Like, I couldn't have gotten dumber from that. You know, it's not that simple. It's like with jazz. I'm like, man, I listened to jazz today. Good job. It wasn't homework. It wasn't, but it wasn't the immediate dopamine hit I get when I hear the opening riff to Enter Sandman, maybe not Enter Sandman, but to any of the songs.
Pretty good
American
opening
Idiot.
riff.
Yeah. Oh, of course. And I love Metallica, as well documented on this podcast. But I think that Fiona, and this is where I think artists that had taken such a wide array, like Flea, that taken such a wide array of input, you can't, if you get really into those artists, you can't help but wonder and want to experience for yourself, like, how does a band write any of the songs on this album, The Other Wheel, or a song like There by Radiohead that just does not feel Western in its composition? Oh, they listen to a lot of different shit, and I just love that. And you're gonna latch on to some of it more than, you know, we're not professional musicians. You might not have the time to do that level of exploration, but it's just, I don't know. I'm so grateful to Stanley Kubrick is another example. Martin Scorsese, you know, like they open up those other avenues of cinema, and you might not latch on to what influenced them, but it's really, really cool when artists can open doors for you like that.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact, I feel like art is a feedback loop of influence and inspiration in any medium. But with music, I do think there's really something special with music. The way I've said it before, and I don't think I've said this on the podcast, but I am quoting myself, is I remember having a conversation where I was like, man, it's so funny that you can take a guy playing a blues riff on an acoustic guitar in like the fucking Dust Bowl in 1930 and draw a straight line to like Cardi B, you know, or whatever. Like, it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, I love that. And I don't know that things are like.
How do you mean, though? Do you mean like because her music sounds blues somehow or something? Or?
What I mean is that basically from guitar music to everything that is contemporary now, it all seems to go back to this kind of foundation of blues, which then gets us rock and roll, and that gets us popular music. I guess that's what I mean.
Got it. No, I appreciate it.
Music didn't start there, but popular music started with the blues, and so everything we have now more or less directly stems out of that. And I think that is really fascinating, and maybe other things do work in such a clean way, but it seems to me like music is kind of special in that way.
Well, I think that I think music is special in that way too, but I think that you could say the same thing for film, is that like Stanley Kubrick went to the movie theater every single day, and this is when, during the war era, when it was basically not purely propagandistic, but, you know, a lot of films that would just be like news bulletins and then like a film of the day or whatever. And that is all I'm saying from that, is that story has to follow a certain conventional narrative. Not everything has to be 3 acts. Not everything has to have a character arc. Not everything has to be, you know what I'm saying? But if you're going to break that convention and only have 2 acts that are disconnected, Full Metal Jacket or whatever like that, you still have to follow that essence of story. And it's the same thing with Radiohead or with Fiona. It's like, if you are not going to have choruses, you can't overload the listener's senses by being so bombastic for something they have no frame of reference for. And I think that that's what great musical artists do so well, and great filmmakers do poorly and well, you know, is if you're going Hitchcock, if you're going to break convention, you have to do it. You have to be fucking better than everything else in every other facet, and you have to do it for a reason. If you're going to not just have a verse chorus and you want it to sound like classical music, but also, you know, this or that or whatever, and not just a straight blues call and response or something like that, there's that balance. And I'm not disagreeing that, like, you know, where you said music is, but I think that, like, yeah, there is that framework that you have to work within, and if you're going to work outside of it, you can't abandon it wholly. And that, I don't know. That's all.
Yeah. And I mean, what I'm differentiating it from is, like, you know, like big band music or something. It just seems it's like around the early 1950s, you start to get this thing called rock and roll or rhythm and blues or whatever. And that it's like
that Elvis invented, right?
Yeah. That Elvis invented. Well, he perfected it.
Sure. Yeah,
he made it less scary. And you know what I mean. Yeah, I think the point is made. Now, we've talked about how different this album sounds from its predecessors. There's some specific reasons for that we'll get into. I want to get into the title itself before we talk about who played on this album and who's behind the boards and everything like that. I'm going to say the full title one more time.
Please.
The idler wheel is wiser than the driver of the screw, and whipping cords will serve you more than ropes will ever do. Now, Zach, first of all, I just want to ask you, what do you think about this title?
Walker, I adore it. And as much as I love Win the Pawn, I felt like you sensed, or maybe there was slight off-pod hinting, but it was pretty organic that you could tell that, like, as much as I love the album, I love the bold ambition of it, I don't love the poem necessarily, or what. I just I love the choice, but I don't at the same time. This one, going back to I feel the maturity of this artist. I connect to this elongated title more than I do Win the Pawn. And I get maybe the potential metaphors or whatever within Win the Pawn, and I know the backstory. I just think this one I love it. It's so visceral. It feels tighter. The whipping cords will serve you more than ropes will ever do. It's just the driver of the screw. It's a lot of visceral, physical imagery of being constrained and tortured in my mind. You're not sorry. Now I'm getting into my interpretation. I just like it more than the previous one that has done that. And on its own, I adore it. I think it is so awesome.
Well, the idler wheel is wiser than the driver of the screw. To me, it evokes, I don't know that this is what it means, but I think about the fact that Fiona has, maybe by our perception at this point, sat idle for about 7 years, and once again is saying, I know what the fuck I'm doing. People telling me how to do it are wrong because they're not me and they're not doing what I'm doing. I once again get kind of a statement of radical self-affirmation from this of, what does the other poem end with? Because you'll know that you're right. She believes in what she's doing. But Zach, I don't have to speculate endlessly because I do have a quote here from Fiona about the poem itself. But do you want to say anything that it means to you before I read that?
I mean, I'd love to hear the quote. I'd love to hear it straight from the artist, but I fully agree with that. And I just, I think, this is what I wanted to say. You know, the phrase in film about what to do, or a critique is tell, don't show, right? Or show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell. In film. In music, I don't think that really applies because it's an auditory. I feel like saying tell, don't show is actually a positive. And I feel like, so if I could invent that reverse compliment, I would say she's telling, not showing. You have to think about it. It's on its face. It's not, because I love how self-empowered she is. And you talked about An Extraordinary Machine. The opening track is more reminiscent of like a style we hear in hip hop of like the self-empowerment, broadly speaking. I feel like this embodies that too, where it's like, I've been idle, but like, I fucking know what I'm talking about. But it's not, the cover of the album is not, we'll talk about that. It's not like her, doing a jumping jack, flexing her muscle, right? It's restrained. And I feel like even though if you just think about it, it seems like it's about her, and we'll hear from the artists themselves in 1 second. But that's what I love about it. It's self-empowered, but it's like, she's not showing you right away. It's not Fiona Apple is awesome.
Yes, but the cover is a self-portrait that she drew. The album, she drew all the album art. The poem is written into this self-portrait. It's really cool. She can really draw. It's a very, not surprisingly, very specific style. I would say it's not going for realism. It's like expressionistic. And it's really cool. But I think it's another indicator of just how much this album is being distilled down to Fiona Apple's vision. There are way less people in the band. Zach is holding up a drawing he did.
A work in progress.
Oh, I love it. Dig it. Oh, Zach, you were saying for music, it's tell, don't show. What if we said play, don't say?
Thank you. There we go. That's perfect.
Hey, we need to P, not S here, they'll say in the studio. Okay, so this is what Fiona had to say about the poem. I came up with it in a total rush. After having stayed up all night on deadline, it just came to me right after the sun rose. I didn't realize people would be like, oh shit, another poem. It just came out to be what it was. Sorry. If you think about it, the driver of the screw has one job, and he is always trying to change things. But the idler wheel is there and has this great effect on what the gears do. The idler wheel knows the machine much better than just this one thing that's performing this one task. For the second line, I had read about whipping cords in a nautical book that my last boyfriend had. I read that when ropes get frayed at sea, you can repair the frayed ends of the ropes with whipping cords that are very strong. This goes right back to the parenting thing. If I had a kid and I had a choice between teaching somebody how to avoid trouble or teaching them how to get out of it, if I had a kid and I had a choice between teaching somebody how to avoid trouble or teaching them how to get out of it, I'd teach them how to get out of it.
Oh man, she's so fucking awesome.
She's so deep, man.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry. Please go ahead, please.
No, I just wish I was able to see the world or think about things in this way.
Yeah,
or maybe not. It seems also really hard.
I don't want to.
Seems like there's a price to pay for it.
I know. I don't want to unduly beg. I know Fiona Apple is a person. She has flaws. Blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what she is so genuine and masterful at is it's not a facade of the way it started. I don't know what it means. Here's a incredibly deep answer that is probably coming to me as I'm analyzing my own work in the moment.
Sure.
Of course she's been around the block. She knows what questions are going to be asked, especially, but it's so authentic, again, just to reuse that word. And my favorite part of that quote is where she talks about the idler wheel knows the sum of the parts in the machine essentially better than what was it? The wheel.
It's saying like it's not just this thing that does one job. It like understands the whole machine.
To me, so she's shifting gears. What, like, that could be a commentary on like hierarchy in class, like take the medical industry, for instance. I have a lot of friends who are nurses. I don't hang out with like a lot of doctors or something. I'm not trying to pretend here, but I do have a friend who's a pediatric anesthesiologist, and listening to them vent about their jobs, as we all do to each other. My take is that the people in the trenches, the nurses, which is a very well-respected and well-compensated profession, but they understand the whole functioning of the organization of the hospital better. Mm-hmm. And they make less money. And they go to school for less time. I'm not railing against this, but people in the trenches, usually at whatever level, a lot of times will understand the things a lot better than the multi-million-dollar per year, $100 million per year CEO or something like that. An animator at Disney might know what's better than, you know what I'm saying? Like, what, and that's not always going to be the case. But I feel like she's commentating on how it's so brilliant. And I don't know if that's what I get out of it though. So anyways, she's really smart.
She's smart. She's great. We should do a podcast about her.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so Zach, we referenced that this album is different. It's a departure in many ways. Can you just give us like the stats of who's playing, who's producing? What the heck's going on here? When did it come out? We already covered that, I guess. But any just data that you want to give us, raw data.
Well, Walker, the artist is Fiona Apple. Yeah. No, it was produced by.
Wait, hold on. Is that the same? Is this a different one than Fiona Apple McAfee Maggart?
Same. I just didn't include the full title. Yes,
okay,
exactly.
Thank you.
Born in 1977, I want to say. Anyways, moving on. September.
I didn't know you were on a first two names basis with her.
Miss Apple. Ms. It was released June 18th, 2012. Now, the recorded dates of this album are listed not just on Wikipedia, although you can find it there too, as 2008 through 2011. Very, very interesting on that. And I'm sure you probably have this quote as well, but to summarize, she said that it was sort of a looser approach over an elongated period of time. Now, she did have that with Extraordinary Machine, but this just seems different, and we'll talk about that more in depth later. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. But it was not I'm in the studio for 6 months making an album. It
Yeah, I mean, this is like where she's a little bit of an unreliable narrator because the quote is like, I don't know, I've been working on it since 2010, 9, 8. Like she's kind of like, it's not exactly clear, but at the very least, these sessions took place, as you said, in a kind of relaxed manner over a few years.
The locations of where it was recorded is in Los Feliz, California, and New York City, her home state, even though she maintains a presence on the West Coast as well. So both coasts. It was released through Epic and Clean Slate Records, as her previous 3 albums, I believe, also have been. So same record label. The biggest point of departure, maybe not the biggest, but what stands out at least is that the producers of this album are Fiona Apple and Charlie Drayton. And, we talked ad nauseum about the collaboration, the production, et cetera, between her and John Bryan. But before we elaborate on that, I would just say this album clocks in at 42 minutes and 39 seconds, a little shorter than the previous one. But that is in the truest sense of the word, just the data pertaining to the album. We could talk about sales and reviews if you want, but I want to hear you talk about the production if you don't mind.
Well, like we said, this album has a really different sound. I don't know if we've specified much what that is, but it is incredibly stripped down, the most stripped down of all her records, after I would say the most produced of all her records. So it's a really, really stark contrast following Extraordinary Machine. Charles Drayton was Fiona Apple's touring drummer from 2005, off and on from 2005 on. But when they met, they really, really had this like intense creative chemistry. It was actually Mike Elizondo, the producer of Extraordinary Machine, that introduced them. And Drayton drums for her on her Letterman appearance in 2005. And they just had amazing chemistry, really, really hit it off. And so later he joins her for a 14-month tour. I have a quote from him here about how their kind of collaboration came to be, if that's all right.
Please.
So he says a little over a year ago at the time, he's referring to 2008 at the time he's giving this interview. He says, I did a gig with Fiona and keyboardist Dave Palmer, just a trio. For some time, she'd been looking to perform her music in a different way than the original formula, which I believe may have been research toward a new path for ideas to flow musically. And during that phase, I felt she'd soon find new territory to explore and create. Not long after, she called and asked if I would listen to some new songs and ideas she'd been working on. The song treatments were piano and vocal only, and on my first listen, I not only thought they were amazing, but also that they could have been released just as they were. I thought her fans would love that as well. Needless to say, I was overwhelmed to be one of the first to hear the body of work, although once I landed back on my feet, I realized the challenge in front of me. Fiona expressed wanting to incorporate minimal instrumentation to the new material. She asked me how I would join rhythm to the pieces, and if any ideas came to me, would I share them with her? She was already in producer mode. So, Zach, I think that kind of like naturally flows into just what I think is one of the most interesting things about this record, which is there are only 3 musicians listed, plus her sister Maud does a vocal. It's
tracks,
like
right?
Just on Hot Knife, which I would say is like a double female vocal duet.
Yeah.
But other than that appearance by Maud, there's only 3 players. There's Fiona Apple, credited in the liner notes as Feedy, and then it lists what she plays on it, and that's listed as following: field recording, loops, truck stomping, dance partner, thighs on Daredevil, percussion, piano, Celeste, timpani on Hot Knife, voice strings, singing, artwork, bass, keyboard, production. And then Charles Dayton, Charlie, and he is listed as CD. And what he plays is kora, auto harp, truck stomping, dance partner, percussion, guitar, bouzouki, I don't know that instrument, marimba, drum set, voice strings, thighs on Daredevil, field recording, pillow, voice of pain, baritone vocals, string harp, Taisco guitar, production. And then the only other musician is Sebastian Steinberg, who plays acoustic bass and harmony guitar.
Yeah, well,
so that's
Robert
it.
Plant
That
plays
is
the harmonica on it, right? Isn't he listed in it?
Yeah, actually, that's Dan Aykroyd is playing the harmonica on
Sorry.
this album.
I was confused the two of them.
But yeah, so that's I think that is just a good amount of information to kind of set up how minimal this is, even though a lot of different sounds, instruments, and even not, kind of cheeky things like dance partner, voice of pain are listed from Charlie and Fiona. This is really minimal in terms of its arrangements. There are certainly no songs that sound like they are meant for pop radio. Even some of the instruments that are listed here, sometimes it's like a drum will come in for, it'll do one fill and then not play anything for the rest of the song. Also, I'm looking up the bouzouki, is a plucked string instrument that's in the lute family. And now I'm realizing that is probably in the song Werewolf, a sound that I assumed was a banjo, but I don't see banjo listed here. And that's another example of a dunk, 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 dunk. It plays like 4 or 5 notes and then dips out for the rest of the song.
Is it a laps played instrument or is it held upright like it's okay if you don't have that pulled
It looks like you would play it like a guitar.
Interesting, yeah. Because
it's reminiscent. It says it's reminiscent of a mandolin, but pitched lower.
Yeah, and people confuse the mandolin and the fiddle and stuff like that too, right? So you were saying it, you thought maybe it was a banjo. I always assumed it was that as well. But folks, this is the ear for production of Walker. Even though he was reading it, I love the fact that you could point immediately to what song you think that instrument is played on. I just have one quick thing in terms of points of departure and what you said. How and I was aware of Charlie Drayton's sort of history prior to producing this album, and that I was very, very, in researching the history of this, it stood out to me immediately that his collaboration with her as a drummer, touring, what have you, was after the release of Extraordinary Machine, more or less touring that album, because she had worked with the same percussionist, just as she had worked with the same producer, Matt Chamberlain, on her first 3 albums. And I understand that John Bryan did not actually produce Tidal, but he was heavily involved in the creation of that album, right? Played a lot of instruments and collaborating. It seems to me she made a very clean break from a lot of the previous collaborators. And not because they're bad people or anything like that. That's not what I'm getting at. But I think that's really cool. And she's
doing something different. So it makes sense to work with different people.
Absolutely. And, there are drummers, Dave Grohl, Phil Collins, whatever, who understand so much more than just being an expert drummer. Many drummers, many musicians. But we tend to think of it, at least I do, as a very specific type of musician or whatever, because drums are just so involved. This is probably sounding a little ignorant, but I mean it in more of a positive way. I think to collaborate with somebody whose primary focus is percussion is such an interesting choice, right? Rather than, I don't know, like someone like Paul McCartney, who's an amazing bass player, guitar player, and drummer, but strings come first, It's like, it totally makes sense that she would go for that, not muted, but more. The fact that bass is even listed as an instrument on this album cracks me up, because it almost sounds like a White Stripes album in terms of its lack of bass guitar. And I love it.
I love the
really
choice
cool.
that it's always an acoustic bass too, though. It really has those like it has that really like it's. I don't think it's fretless bass, but it has that kind of like flow. It just seamlessly like fits into what they're doing. Yeah. And I also would say too, like this sound, the sounds they go for all sound really dry too. Like there's really it sounds really effectsless. And this is a studio album. And I emphasize that because her next record is recorded at home. And so, but this is a studio album that sounds like a bedroom album to me in the best possible way. So you have the intimacy of it sounding like a home recorded project and the quality of it being a studio project. But yeah, it's like, whatever effects are on there, I'm sure there's reverb on her vocals and stuff like that, but it is subtle and it really, really sounds raw, acoustic, and in the room. There's just one other thing I wanted to say about this collaboration, which was kind of what Fiona said about it. You talked about, I don't know if it was the word used, but I feel like we've both been talking about kind of the immediacy of this record, just how Fiona it feels, and it feels maybe more Fiona than anything that has come out so far. She seems to really credit him with kind of elevating her approach, which is the quote is, she says, "Charlie makes me pay attention to what's happening right now." And then going on about this, elaborating, she says, "He is my partner now in music. We're working together, producing my next album, and I feel that he has influenced the way I write. I've written things that are a little more challenging for me to play and a little more challenging for me to sing because I know he's going to be with me and that I'm going to get the feeling of focus and dedication to every single thing that I get when I'm around him." So, yeah, something about these guys really, really inspired each other. And maybe it's just like relationships in any field, because I feel like the way her and John Bryan talked about each other was not too different than this, but it's just like, maybe sometimes to reinvigorate yourself, you need to, see what chemistry you have with a new person. Like, it's just like making a new friend or having a new romantic partner or something. It's just like, this is what needed to happen to get to this new sound.
Yeah. Using Leonardo DiCaprio instead of Robert De Niro.
Using Leo instead of De Niro to make your pictures. But I mean, what is interesting is I do think that like the John Bryan version of Extraordinary Machine, it doesn't sound like the Idler Wheel, but it certainly sounds more connected to the Idler Wheel than the Mike Elizondo version does to me.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I think I agree.
But that probably speaks more to the direction that she is going and is able to tap into more with Charles Drayton than it does that John Bryan was pushing her in that direction. But so, Zach, you already mentioned that sessions started as early as 2008. This was also very secret. Fiona did not want any publicity on the fact that she was recording stuff, because I think that we've kind of found that her process is, with the exception of Extraordinary Machine, it's not super results driven necessarily. It's like, I'm making music because I have music to make, and we'll see what happens, and maybe it'll become an album, maybe it won't. There have been multiple contemplations of retirement already, so I definitely get the choice to not create buzz and have pressure around it. But the sessions did yield a finished product in 2011, but Fiona opted to hold on to the release because there was like total corporate meltdown and disarray at Epic Records, and she loved what she had and believed in the album enough that she wanted it handled properly. So she waited until the label found a new president. Now, I also think this is interesting because this is 2012. That means we're in the height of the Romney campaign. Do you think she was out there stumping for Mitt Romney as well? Or do you think, like, was she looking for a new president across the board, not just at Epic, but for our nation?
I don't know. I don't have any insight on that, Walker, but I do want to say I think America has largely, maybe not forgotten Mitt Romney, but he's kind of like the Bob Dole of his era, right? It's like, he had Mitt Romney, I believe, was governor of Massachusetts for a long time. Replacing Whitey Bulger's brother as governor.
No, Whitey Bulger.
Senator.
State senator, yeah.
But he eventually was the governor of Massachusetts, though. All that to say, Mitt Romney, I don't, in my little circle, talked about super often, like as much as like Trump or something like that. But I did quote him yesterday through text message to Walker, talking about my preparation level for this episode. I said I have binders full of women of notes. Go on YouTube, listeners, and watch the debate between President Obama and nominee Mitt Romney. Anyways, that's all. So I don't think she was out there canvassing or pounding the pavement for Mitt Romney. But I wouldn't be
unlikely to me too. Seems unlikely to me.
Okay. I was going to say probably, but I don't know.
I just think it's like, it's just, there is something, Fiona finds herself amidst a lot of chaos and how to handle her career, doesn't she? So it's interesting that it took a while for it to get released, but I'm glad that she had the wherewithal and the power to hold on to this until she was ready for it to come out. But in early 2012, it was announced, the title was announced, the single Every Single Night was released, and she embarked on a small tour playing the new songs. And she was quoted as saying, this album I love, even though there's a lot of pain that went through during the making of it. I feel very sure of myself. Not that I'm so great, but that I'm right. Again, that comes up a lot. I feel like it for Fiona Apple is that she is like, I'm right. And I like that attitude, and I agree with her.
Yeah. She likes her for her, not because she's like Cindy Crawford. No,
not because I dated Paul Thomas Anderson.
No, but I love that because she's so empowered, but I believe she comes across humble as well. I know she's a very cause-oriented person, and she certainly has opinions that we would associate to political causes, and I love that. But in this context and in that quote, I feel like what she's such a master of is being like, I'm right for me, and this is like, or my art or whatever. It doesn't mean here's my opinions on everything or art or whatever, and you all need to think that. She has a great level of confidence in the presentation of her art, and I think
it's
that's
confidence,
awesome.
Not arrogance, is how I perceive it.
Absolutely,
and confidence is a positive attribute, in my opinion. Arrogance, not so much.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we're kind of starting to wind down the background, and next week we're going to go through the album track by track. But I know you wanted to talk a little bit about how this album was received critically. I'd love to hear what you have on that.
Yeah, I mean, not a ton to go through. Unsurprisingly, at least for me, this album was incredibly well regarded. More so than Extraordinary Machine, though. So I'm a Metacritic person myself for both film and music. I like their scoring system and the way they aggregate reviews a lot better than Rotten Tomatoes. And on Metacritic, this album has an 89 out of 100. It works on a scale of anything above 80 is universal acclaim. Okay. So this album received universal acclaim from all the smart, cool people that you want to get universal acclaim from. And it just... it was on many year-end lists, and now that we're in the 2020s, it's regarded as one of the best albums of the 2010s. That is, in 2019, the album was included on the Guardian's 100 Best Albums of the 21st Century, and it ranked 5th on Pitchfork's list of the 200 Best Albums of the 2010s. So Pitchfork getting it right for once. Yeah. I don't know what they originally gave it. That may have been backtracking.
Albums we rated correctly because we could. I think they gave it a 9 at the time. And it was their pick for best new music.
Well, that's amazing.
Like they were super on this album, and Pitchfork was how I was getting my updates on what cool new music to listen to at the time.
Totally. Now you're a true social guy, though, exclusively, right?
Yeah, now I just listen to YMCA because it was a Trump campaign song. So it's the only good song as far as I'm concerned. And I also listen to that racist Don't Try This in a Small Town Country song that came out earlier this year. Don't try this in a small... I've only heard of it. I've actually never heard it either. I've just read the lyrics and been like, gross.
And then, in 2020, a very, very big year for Fiona Apple. Rolling Stone placed this album at number 213 on its list of 500 greatest albums of all time. Okay. So, I mean, that's just, it's this is not how, as listeners and fans of music, I really try not to let my perception and expectations be guided by what I jokingly said, all the smart, cool people, but that is really, really huge. And similarly to the band we've invoked many times on this very episode, or at least I have, Hail to the Thief was like an A minus, but it's seen as a deeply divided, not like mixed or average reviews, but like very divisive, blah, blah, blah. It's like it got universal fucking acclaim. But its follow-up In Rainbows actually got universal fucking acclaim, and it's generally not thought of as a divisive album unless you're on Reddit and somebody's trying to get attention by having a stupid hot take that isn't hot. So I think it's not, things aren't a one-to-one, but I do think, though, in comparison to the album that came before it, this one is more clear that it's not divisive in terms of Fiona Apple fans and people that love her work.
It's just a more profound and unique artistic statement, in my opinion. And again, like Radiohead, that's like that. I would say similarly, it's like the one that I don't like as much is a minus, but it's an incredibly special album that doesn't sound like anybody else could have made it. I think this quote might lead us in nicely to kind of, resting our case for today and encouraging folks to listen to the album before next week. Please. If you haven't heard it, if you have heard it, listen to it again. I'm going to listen to it a few more times before we talk about it for sure. But just to kind of like put us in the mood of what we're going to be listening to and going through next week, I really liked this paragraph from the review at the time that Pitchfork gave it. It says, "This is the most distilled Fiona Apple album yet. While her celebrated previous work was marked by eclectic musical flourishes courtesy of producers including John Bryan and Mike Elizondo, The Idler Wheel is fearlessly austere in comparison. She worked with touring drummer Charlie Drayton on the album, and his touches are light and incisive. Speaking of the record's signature clattering percussion, including thigh slaps, truck stomps, and pillow, according to the credits, Apple associated the homemade sounds with an increased freedom. Quote, I just like that feeling of I'm in charge. I can do whatever I want, end quote. And this music concrete approach is not random. Every single waveform is pierced with purpose, from the muted heartbeat thumping through Valentine to the childlike plinks popping around the uncharacteristically optimistic Anything We Want, to the chugging factory sounds that give Jonathan its uneasy rhythm. On the oddly life-affirming Werewolf, a banjo shows up, which we now know is a bouzouki, so sorry, Pitchfork. Oh, I should write albums we would list the correct instrument in our review of if we could. If we'd listened to Idiotalk at the time.
Love how angry about this Pitchfork article from 3 years ago you are.
A banjo shows up, plucks exactly 4 notes, and then dips out, never to return. You made an island of me, she belts on that song, and the Idler Wheel's spareness does lend it an insular loneliness, one that's divorced from the outside world while also being intimately in tune with its basic realities. As Fiona's self-drawn album cover suggests, the inner workings of her mind can be scary, ugly, and head-splinteringly vivid. I mean, I think that's a really well-written review and a really good summation of what this album sounds like.
I agree.
Do you have anything that you want to add before we break for the week and go listen to the Idler Wheel a few more times? Come back and listen to it again together?
Not much. I mean, I would just love to summarize and say I don't know if it sounds like this or not. It may sound like I have a somewhat uncomplicated relationship to this album, at least in comparison to the previous album, Extraordinary Machine. But that's not to say that my commentary or thoughts on this album will be devoid of even minor criticisms. But yeah, as it stands today, I love this album. I'm really, really excited to keep listening to it and to listen to it on pod and just see what new things we glean from it. Very, very excited. And like you said, I would encourage listeners to listen to it in the interim if you've already heard it. It's a really, really fun experience.
Couldn't agree more. Can't wait to talk about the songs with you, Zach, and with you listeners. We will be back next week on a Friday. Hey, Have a nice holiday if you celebrate. I hope you have a good time with your people, whoever they may be. And we will be there to nurse you through your post-turkey hangover next week on a Friday. I have been Walker Glenn.
And I'm Zach Glenn.
Talk to you soon, listeners. Bye.
Bye.
Idiotalk is a Glenn Brothers production. Get in touch with us at idiotalk.podcast@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at idiotalk.podcast. Thanks for listening to